Hello students, in this third lesson on Look Back in Anger, we are going to discuss the two major male characters in the play, the protagonist Jimmy Porter and his friend Cliff. The character of Jimmy Porter. The portraiture of Jimmy Porter, as done by Osborne in the very first act in Look Back in Anger, is that Jimmy is a tall, thin young man about 25 years of age, wearing a very worn out tweed jacket and flannels. Clouds of smoke fill the room from the pipe he is smoking. He is a disconcerting mixture of sincerity and cheerful malice, of tenderness and freebooting cruelty. Restless, importunate, full of pride, a combination which alienates the sensitive and insensitive alike. Blistering honesty or apparent honesty, like his, makes few friends. To many, he may seem sensitive to the point of vulgarity. To others, he is simply a loud mouth. To be a vehement as he is, that is, he is very vehemently, very strongly venting out his anger in bitter words, is to be almost non-committal, and such people, they are non-committal they are not committed to any cause. The doubts suggested here by apparent honesty to the point of vulgarization, almost non-committal, are sufficiently striking, and from Jimmy's first appearance his anger is no less ambiguous than himself. In Jimmy Porter, we are confronted with a man whose anger undoubtedly starts in human idealism and the desire that men should be more honest, more alive, more human than they normally are. Very soon, however, corruption creeps in. Jimmy's sense of outrage is so little controlled by either selflessness, stoicism, or any discipline of the mind that it readily degenerates into moods profoundly destructive to life. The alarming juxtapositions in his makeup with a holy crusade against stupidity. So he is angry against stupidity on the one side and a neurotic shrinking from in-laws and church bells on the other. And he is also venting out his anger against his in-laws, and he is against religion or religious beliefs, the church bells. Cannot be escaped. His motives are hopelessly mixed up. His targets are inconsistent. He lashes at Cliff for both not reading the New Statesman and for reading it. He taunts his wife with her education and Cliff with his ignorance. From the very start, it is clear that rightly or wrongly he has not acquired the normal techniques for accepting suffering, and that he regards his morbid sensitivity to it as evidence of moral superiority. He becomes convinced that he is the only man who really knows what suffering is, and that he has a right to scourge those less agitated than himself, people who have faced or who have seen suffering less than him. There are marked symptoms of persecution complex, both in the tenacity with which he clings to his working class origins as an occasion for masochism, and in his readiness to see his wife's continued correspondence with her parents in terms of conspiracy and betrayal, as if she is still maintaining correspondence with her parents, and as if she is conspiring against him, she is betraying him. His tenderness for his wife, as implied in the bears and squirrels game, as well as elsewhere also, is unable to dispel the restless suspicion which turns love into conquest marriage into revenge, and the normal reticence of others into insult. He can accept neither life nor death with ease. The sound of the church bells torments him with the thought of possible words than his own. It is significant that Alison and Cliff, and later even Helena, feel that Jimmy is basically worthwhile. They may not accept his ideas, and Alison at one stage decides that her sanity depends upon getting away from him, but they never doubt that his torment is at the root that of a good man, and that he deserves success, whether he has the secret of finding it or not. Also, they sense that his anger has in it elements of honesty, courage that might be redemption if they could ever be pleased into effective action. Helena thinks that he is born out of his time and should have lived in the days of the French Revolution. Alison's image of him is always that of a knight in armor, always ready to fight. Jimmy's marriage to Alison is shown to be a perverse one in the style of Strindberg. Jimmy's problem is not the vicious injustice and hypocrisy of the social order. It is his suppressed awareness of the insoluble psychological paradox caused by his desperate, overriding need to possess a woman's complete, unquestioning love, and his simultaneous constitutional inability to get along with anyone. His outbursts are the overflow of his bitterness. Whenever his wife fails to measure up to the standards of devotion that he expects of her at the same time that he knows them to be impossible. Jimmy is the sort of man who needs but is too proud to demand absolute devotion. He needs it all the more from Alison because she comes from the sort of upper class family which he despises. Jimmy's tragedy is simply that he will never find the ideal, and he knows it. He will spend the rest of his life bathed in self-pity, yammering impotently at the misfortunes he himself has created. So now coming to Cliff's character after Jimmy. So his Cliff is presented in the first act by Osborne. Cliff is the same age as Jimmy, short, dark, big-boned, wearing a pullover and grey, new but very creased trousers. He is easy and relaxed, almost to lethargy, with a rather sad, natural intelligence of the self-taught. If Jimmy alienates love, Cliff seems to exact it, demonstrations of it at least, even from the cautious. He is soothing, natural counterpart to Jimmy. And Cliff, though he has his part in the economy of the play, is a disappointingly lightweight character. His significance might have been heightened, perhaps, if the serious, self-improving side of his character had been developed further. I am trying to better myself, he tells Jimmy at the beginning of the play. And later, when he decides to leave the sweet stall, he says, I think I'd like to try something else. You are highly educated and it suits you, but I need something a bit better. Cliff might have been made to represent the older working class tradition of self-improvement, which Jimmy, in his refusal to accept responsibility, is betraying. As it is, Cliff is only slightly less pale character than Colonel Redfern, who is certainly a caricature of his class, though one portrayed with a sympathy which borders on the sentimental. Cliff, the working class Welsh boy, is Jimmy's Horatio in Hamlet, where Horatio is a trustworthy friend to Hamlet, who sticks to him without understanding all the fine points of Jimmy's philosophy. And the scenes Jimmy makes with Elizan have the same candid brutality that Hamlet owed to Ophelia. Cliff is softer, tenderer, and more caring than Jimmy to the latter's women and makes their life more bearable. Cliff shares an affectionate rather than passionate relationship with Elizan, of a gentle, caring friend rather than a lover. He is also her confidant, a person with whom she can share many of her problems. He sympathetically speaks for Elizan to Jimmy, "Leave the poor girlie alone. She is busy." Cliff is sensitive towards Elizan and perceives that she must be tired because of long periods of ironing. Jimmy, on the contrary, only takes an initiative to harass her. Elizan also shows a deep sense of regard for him, and it is he whom she informs about a pregnancy for the first time, whereas she couldn't even disclose the matter to Jimmy until the very end, when she returns home after losing her child. She reveals her sufferings to Jimmy. Cliff serves as a balm to Elizan, making life tolerable for her in Jimmy's one-room apartment. Cliff, we see, is not equally close to Helena as he is to Elizan, partly because Helena is better equipped and more inclined to retort back to Jimmy's invectives, and she also asserts herself, and she does not need his protection to the extent Elizan did. So Cliff, the soothing natural counterpart, becomes comparatively superfluous in her case. The atmosphere of the house is also noisy, and so Cliff says to Jimmy to stop yelling, for he is trying to read. Jimmy, on the contrary, replies in a very funny way, "All right, dear, go to sleep, for I was talking only to myself and none." Cliff, as he is a very close friend to Jimmy, sometimes makes witty comments at Jimmy, but the latter, with his excellent art of argument, always turns the tables on him, as in the case when Cliff calls Jimmy a bloody pig. Although intellectually Jimmy is inferior and not very impressive, still Cliff has a special role to play in Jimmy's life, as he tells him, "You are worth half a dozen Helenas to me or to anyone," as he has been loyal, generous, and a good friend to him. Critics have also gone to the extent of finding homosexual implications in their relationship. So this is in brief about the two male characters, Jimmy Porter and Cliff, whom we come across in Look Back in Anger. So this is all for today. Thank you so much.